All right, so let's pick up where we left off. Where we left off was we started what's called our line and fills process, or our line and flats process. Um, Line is obviously just your character outline, your sort of finished line drawing that you have, this sort of thing, and then your flats or your fills are basically a series of just flat value or color, whatever you choose. We're going to start with value in this particular case. But you start with this sort of in the background. And effectively, what you're doing in this process is you're doing a very simple coloring book process where you're just coloring in all of the general areas that you're going to be using. That you want to have some control over as you sort of paint them. How would you do that? I mean, the same way that you would do it with the fill base, right? You'd do control, click in the box here, make a new layer, grab your brush, and I would probably grab a slightly lighter gray for this part of the process. Really, what you just kind of want to do is, I'm using my AAA drawer here. Really, what you want to do is just kind of do a nice coloring job. Right, again, you're just basically doing a coloring book process. So this shouldn't take too long for you to do. Again, bracket up and down to resize your brush. Now, it's up to you if you want to do a brand new layer for every part of this. I usually don't to save time. Maybe if it's a really super special drawing that I'm doing, maybe I will break out each section. And you don't have to do it just through painting too. You can use things like layer masking, which we'll probably explore a little bit later, to get this process done as well. Right, and if you have areas that are going to overlap like this ring, it's okay, just go ahead and paint them in. Right, so in this particular case, I'm just kind of painting in areas where there's going to be flesh. So if I wanted to do a layer for metal, I would maybe do a layer above this, and I might do something that's a little bit lighter. Again, go back to your fill base, control click. If you run into spots like this that are a little bit messy, that's okay. Just kind of make some quick choices about where you think those volumes are going to end up. And if they don't end up there, that's okay too. We can fix that a little bit later. Don't worry about it too much. All right, so I might say, well, this is metal. And I might say that this necklace has some metal on it. Now we can deal with sort of the details in this necklace separately later, but for right now, let's just block in where everything is going to be. Right, you're going to want 100% opacity on this. There's maybe some other stuff in here that I might want to color in. I might want to put in some sort of guesstimate kind of maybe where some brackets might go. There might be some extra detail that I might want to make on those sandals, but we'll see. But anyway, this is the process, and you can create fills for any part of this that you want to have some control over. Right. The point of doing this is, again, when you control click into any one of these layers, they not only become a foundation for your lighting, but they also create a foundation for just keeping everything nice and clean, right? So the layers aren't just a foundation for lighting, they're also a tool that you can use, right? Anything that you create in your Photoshop canvas can be used both as part of the art, and it can also be used as a tool or a template for something that will give you a little bit more control with your selection, right? So if I were to just draw over his face here, right, I can easily keep everything in bounds just by using my skin layer selection. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these because I've actually added in all of my flats like this. So once my flats are all done, I will end up with a character that looks like this. Now I haven't made specific flats for some of these darker areas, and I'll probably break some of these other parts out a little bit later. But you can create as many flats as you want. Just make sure that you keep track of where all of those layers are. All right, so what's the next thing that we need to do in order to make our character look good? Well, the next thing that we need to do is we need to start our lighting and our shadows. And we're just going to start simple with all of this stuff. One of the things that I recommend that you do is usually start with like your face. Start lighting your head first. And then you can sort of figure out where the rest of the lighting is going to go. You know, as you build your character. If I bring up my brushes here again, let's do a new layer here. What you'll notice is that probably things are going to be a little bit lighter up here, and they're going to be a little bit medium in light down here, and they're going to be lower light on the bottom, right? And so you're going to follow that light to shadow model. When it comes to keeping your nice lit areas, one thing that I recommend doing is starting with kind of figuring out where your hot spots are going to be. So for skin, I'm going to use Airbrush Soft to get started, but I'm going to pull in my lighting quite a bit. So again, don't use white, don't use black. And remember that lighting starts within, right? So if I select my skin layer, Control click in that box, right? Remember, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have so much light in the middle of the face that it flattens everything out. What I want to do is I want to start with where's the light hitting the head, what are the planar surfaces it's going to hit. Remember, those planar surfaces are going to be the surfaces closest to the camera. Right, something like that. And we might have some rim lighting on the outside here. Now, because the head is not completely edged, remember, right? If you have an edged face, you can just go ahead and use side 1, 2, or 3 of your light, medium, and dark. But with a face, you're not really working with light, medium, dark. You're working with a semi-curved surface. So again, on this lighting layer, what I'm going to try and do is try and find the terminator. And I'm just going to kind of see if I can follow that line, maybe down the side of the face. Right, or block in that lighting. Let's lower the opacity on this. It's a little strong. Right, so here's maybe where the light's hitting. Maybe it comes up to that cheek, down to the jaw. And so the terminator line is basically this sort of snaky line that comes in here. Right, we've got a little bit of light that comes in like that. For some of the other stuff like the ear, you can sort of block in kind of where that lighting is going to be, but there's really no need to get all the finer details in the ear done, right? If you think you've gone a little too far with your lighting, just going to grab my soft eraser here. I think it starts at 20% on here, the 20% eraser. I'm going to bump it up to like 70%. And if I give it a nice light touch, I should be able to get a little bit more control over my lighting. Again, I'm just going really light with my pressure here. Don't go too hard or too far in this. Okay. Now, why didn't I make my character's eyes white? Well, that's because characters' eyes really just kind of aren't white. In fact, as a default, as you start to color these in, one of the things that you'll see is that eyes tend to actually be closer to, they look a little bit more natural, I'll just say, if you start them closer to flesh tone and then maybe add in a highlight, later. So what we're doing here, again, we're just blocking in kind of where the lighting is going to be. Try and get things about right on your head. Again, things don't have to be perfect. You can always add a little bit of finesse later and clean things up. Don't get overly detailed with your lighting. Just do whatever you think is going to give things the best look. Remember, things that are brighter are coming toward you. Things that are darker from you are sort of receding away from you. Okay, so like there's some decent blocking for my face. Remember, do that with all of your skin layers. Right. Where is the light going to be? Right, my light's coming down from this angle here. So I'm going to have some lighting on the back of the hand. Remember, hands are not flat, they're sort of rounded a little bit. So you won't see an even amount of light on the back of the hand. You'll see the light moves with the curvature of the fingers. Yeah, all right. I mean, so that's maybe a decent start for skin. Remember, different surfaces have different types of reflectivity. They have different types of surface properties. So you want to reflect that in your, no pun intended, in your drawing. Another place that we might do this, make a new layer. So I've got this area here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this area might be like kind of golden, and I've got a button here, so I'm going to push the fabric out a little bit more toward the top and just underneath. Now you'll notice I'm not doing any shadows at this point. I'm just sticking with light, right? If I do shadows, I'll do those on a separate layer. And again, I'll go into, like, say, my skin again. I won't pick black, I'll just pick sort of a dark gray. And then if I want, I can start to put my shadows in. Make sure you're in nice and close when you put all of your lighting in, but also make sure that you back out, again, Control minus or Control plus. Zoom in and out and see how everything looks as a whole. Really, like, once you've got a couple of spots kind of figured out, most of the rest of it should be not too hard. I do have some metallic areas, so let's sort of address how we might do metals. So in this case, I'm actually going to move my brush to, let's still keep it soft, but let's make it a little bit harder. Again, if I go into my brush settings here, I'll just up the hardness to maybe 67 or maybe 70%, somewhere in there, 70, 80%. And that should give me a harder edge to my brush. So remember, again, when you're doing like reflective surfaces, you're going to follow the contour, right? That's kind of how we do this. I'm going to up my opacity, but not all the way to the top, maybe 70%. So I'm going to find the part that's closest to me. I'm going to follow the contour. Now we have a different form, right? So this contour is the one that we're going to follow. And then we'll do the same on this claw, and this one, and this one. Right? We'll follow similar shapes on those guys. This is a different section, right? So this should have a different bit of lighting on it. The wrist, this is the part that's closest to my eye, right? I'll maybe follow that contour along. And then for this area, I can just do a single stripe along the edge here. And again, that sort of just kind of blocks in where that lighting is going to be. Now, when you're doing reflective surfaces, you know, one block of lighting is probably not going to be enough. You might need to do maybe some darker, maybe on a different layer. Just do some darker surfaces. Figure out where those are going to be. Right? If you don't like what you see, you can always go back in. And eliminate them or redraw them however you see fit. One thing that you tend to see is, you know, if you've got two pieces of metal next to one another, don't forget that they reflect one another. So you'll see not really a shadow on metallic surfaces, but you'll still have ambient occlusion, and you'll still have reflection between metallic surfaces. You'll also usually have, along with the highlight, you'll have sort of a dark line immediately below that highlight. That's not always true, but it's usually true. And the reason is because the highlight tends to be like your sky area, and this line tends to represent the scenery that's being kind of reflected. And remember, on reflective surfaces, light sort of gets scattered and bent, right? So we can maybe pull some of that dark scenery down a little bit, like it's bleeding down over the edge of that metal, right? So you might need to experiment with this a little bit to get the right look, but you'll find it. And once you have worked a little bit on your lighting, you should end up with something like this. So I have got this all started here. Once you've arrived at this point, this might take you a little bit of time. It might take you a little bit of effort to try and figure out, again, exactly where all the lighting is coming from for each of these surfaces. But once you've gotten to this point, really, I would argue the hard part is over, and now we can get into the fun stuff, which is coloration and then later polish and detail. So that's where we're going to pick it up next time. We'll start coloring this guy in.